Joining me now to discuss the fallout of these allegations is NBC News Political Director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd. Chuck, thanks for being with us today.
Happy to, Brett.
Well, we've seen these types of allegations too many times before, so let me start by getting your take on the tenor of this news and the reaction to it.
Well, it's been interesting to see how I think it's been. I'm watching New York Democrats, clearly all of them walking on eggshells. You know, for instance, do you recall who the first senator was that asked for Al Franken's resignation? I'm sure you don't need to chime in there. You know the answer. It was Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. So, you know, I do think this is a pretty much a big challenge here for New York Democrats in general, the Democratic Party as a whole, and I think that that's why there's been this sort of waiting for another shoe to drop before you've seen a whole bunch of Democrats run to the microphones to decide what they think the fate of Cuomo should be. But let's take it from a bigger picture here. Today's Democratic Party and Andrew Cuomo's leadership style don't mesh. Today's Democratic Party and Bill Clinton's style don't mesh. I don't think Bill Clinton would be very welcome in today's Democratic Party, and I don't know if Andrew Cuomo can survive. It's just his, you know, if you even set the harassment allegations aside, and it's hard to say it that way, I don't want to diminish them. The bullying style is something that I think all of this together, and I think there is sort of a, you know, the phrase time's up. I think for a lot of New York Democrats who have not been in the world, not part of the Cuomo circle, I think they're quietly saying time's up, and I think that's going to be his challenge. That said, you know him well. I think I know him well. He's not walking away. And this will be a fight, and I think it's going to be a long year for New York Democrats.
Yeah, very interesting. The governor made it a point that he feels he didn't fight back hard enough when he was being attacked about his handling of the COVID in the nursing homes. These accusations are much more personal, and he hasn't appeared for his daily news briefing since the beginning of the week before this story caught fire. How do you think he needs to address it?
Straightforward, and I mean, his strength is when he talks. And so for somebody that is perceived to be so accessible, I think walking away from the cameras looks even worse. You know, there's some governors, like the one in Florida, never talks to the press. So him ignoring us and ignoring the press, and you're just like, yeah, and the sun rose in the east. When Andy Cuomo is doing it, you're like, what's wrong? What don't you want to deal with? So I don't think he's handling it right. It may be that he doesn't think there are good answers to have here, but if he has any hope of sort of salvaging his future here, I think he needs to address this more head on than he has.
You think he should openly call for an independent investigation?
Yes, and then some. I mean, you know, anything first of all, you call for an investigation like that, you want to talk about a way to calm the waters. Hey, I'm calling for an open investigation. Let's calm down and let's wait to see on that. But that is another question. Take the harassment allegations. Who does the investigating? And I know there's a lot of distrust with the ethics, with the way that the ethics world works in Albany right now. So, you know, who would do that investigation? When it comes to the personal harassment allegations, I think do you know the answer to that?
I'm not sure I know the answer at this point. Let me pivot a little bit.
Right.
Early on in this pandemic, President Biden referred to Cuomo as the gold standard. How does the president respond to this? Does he try to distance himself from the governor?
I think he already has. I mean, you've seen, I think that question's been thrown at some both, I think, shouted at the president and also at the press briefing. And there is definitely, you can feel the distance beginning. And you're seeing it all over. You're seeing it with Chuck Schumer. You're seeing it with other New York Democrats who are saying, hey, let's wait for all the information to be out. So I don't think you're going to see much praise anymore for how he handled things. And, you know, I will say this is sort of one of those lessons. Watching Cuomo, frankly, watching Ted Cruz, it is a reminder how you treat your political enemies when things are going good for you. Your political enemies will remember when things aren't going for you. And I do think both Cuomo and Cruz are experiencing, you know, a bit of that you reap what you sow sometimes.
Yeah, and social media will remind you as well. The governor got plenty of positive national attention for his handling of the pandemic. He even put out a book on the matter, as everybody's stated. He's had a rough few weeks between the allegations of the nursing home data cover-up and now these allegations of this inappropriate behavior. The big question, does he survive this politically, do you think?
Well, look, I'm not going to sit here and write a pre-obituary yet for his political career. I think this is very difficult for him. You know, he only has to, by the way, winning a fourth term as New York governor is not easy. He knows firsthand, or I guess you could say he had a front row seat when his father couldn't win a fourth term. You know, he's never been this vulnerable. I don't know on the Democratic side. I do think he will survive. He could survive primary challenges here. I don't think there is the right Democrat to take him down from the nomination if they choose to do that. But he could be very vulnerable to a more moderate Republican like a Tom Reed. That's for sure.
All right, we'll see how it plays out. Chuck Todd, we really appreciate you joining us. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Brett.